Welcome everyone to this special collaborative video. This has been a request, I think, from both of us for a while. My name's Philip Mallis. I'm here today with Tate Set, who many of you will know from his many excellent videos on transport throughout Melbourne and Victoria. And we're here today to do a tier list of Melbourne's tram classes. And we'll briefly explain how that's going to work, but thank you, Tate, for doing this.
Hello everybody, and yes, thank you Phil for having me on. We're just going to go through all the currently in service tram classes in Melbourne, and we're going to place them on a tier list. I think we're going to go from S down to D, and this isn't going to be super technical or anything. There's obviously a lot of variables, and we've got sort of 40 years of different tram designs here that we'll be having a look at. And we haven't really worked out exactly what criteria we're judging them on either. So I think it's going to be a little bit just whatever we feel like. And there'll probably be some actual practical things and some things that are just what we like about those trams, I think.
I'm sure, and I'm sure there'll be some controversy in the comments as well. I'm sure no matter what we say, we're going to get some comments. So we welcome that. Constructive criticism is good. As we said, we're going to go through the currently in service tram classes. We're not going to do every tram class that's ever done in Melbourne. We'll be here for a few weeks, I think. And we're going to go in order from roughly the oldest to the newest.
Yeah, we are going to do the W8s, but we're going to put that last because they are in service, but it's kind of a technicality. The city circle it's predominantly a tourist route. It's not part of the passenger service requirements for Yarra trams, but they do operate out of a functioning tram depot with everyday tram drivers every day. So I would argue they are an in-service tram, but they're certainly fall into a slightly different category. So we're going to start with the Z3 class, which is currently the oldest type of tram on the system, which I think very early 80s Z3 class, I think they came out off the top of my head.
I'm hoping you remember the year.
Yeah, me too.
I don't remember the exact
Luckily,
year.
we've got the Wikipedia page right here. This is a really long Wikipedia article.
Well done. Oh, okay, that's the contract.
77? Is that the contract?
Just 79.
79. There we go. Early 80s, very early 80s, 1979. Yeah. Before the Z3s, there were, of course, the Z1s and Z2s. The Z1s, there were quite a lot of them. The Z2s, there was only a very small number. They were quite different. They sounded quite different. They used to... actually sounded a little bit like a Hitachi train, for anyone who remembers what that sounded like. It was kind of like not a distinctive traction motor sound, but they kind of had this kind of whooshing noise. I don't know. They also had nicer looking headlights than the Z3s. They had like round, very friendly looking headlights.
Very European looking. The original design. Yeah.
And they were all gone out of service in about 2016 or something. You can still ride a Z2 today at the Sydney Tram Museum. They don't run it regularly, but that is the one place you can currently ride a Z2 class. I don't think there are any operational in Victoria anymore. But we're here to talk about Z3s. One of the things about the Z3s is they've got that at the front left, they've got the sort of large set of double doors, which is actually on the part of the tram that's tapered towards the nose, which was probably absolutely fine before we had platform stops. But now that we have platform stops, you end up with this quite large gap between the platform and the door that you can't really do anything about.
It does make it more streamlined. Maybe they save a small amount of electricity with the pointy end instead of a
on the
flat
very
stub
rare
nose.
occasion that they get above like 20 kilometers per hour. I don't think they're the prettiest of trams, but I do think that it's one of the, like we were actually talking about this just before we started recording. You can be nostalgic about stuff that doesn't necessarily look great, and I like Z3s because I've spent a lot of time around them, and it's definitely a very Melbourne looking thing. But I do think that they refined the design a bit with the A's and B's later on, which was sort of because the Zs were built by Comenge in Dandenong, as were the A's and B's. So really, it was one design that sort of evolved throughout time there. So you can definitely see some similarities.
I would say one other thing that I like about these trams is the little separate destination board
Oh yeah.
mounted on top just for the route number.
Yes.
Even though it's broken a lot nowadays, but
Yeah.
I really like that aesthetic. It's different to
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
else we've got, and it's just
It is. I guess that's also a bit of a relic of when all tram stops were on the left-hand side of the road.
Right,
Because
of
now we've got
course.
some island platforms, and then
Yeah.
the route number sort of points away from you.
Well, I've noticed now on the PIDs they've got the route number on the front anyway, like to the right of the,
Oh, yeah.
of the service. But that causes problems because the board at the front is smaller
Yes.
than an A or a B because of the
Yeah.
pointy bit. So
Another thing that I've noticed is that anybody who photographs trams or trains will know that you get issues with the destination boards and numbers flickering.
yeah, like the photo in front of us.
Correct. So they flicker at 50 hertz, which means that if you've got a faster than a 50th of a second shutter speed, you've got a 50-50 chance of getting the destination board lit up. And on the Z3s, the route box and the destination board at the front are not flickering in sync with each other. And you can see it on the Wikipedia picture here, which is in fact Philip's picture, so we can probably put that in the video too.
Yep.
That you'll often get a picture where you can only see the route number or see the destination, which is very annoying.
Yeah. So that bumps it down the list then for ease of photography for Gunzels. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's got to be one of the most important things about any transport vehicle. They've got the drop-down windows that you can stand and
Yes, that's nice.
get a bit of fresh air, which is very nice.
Yeah.
I suppose we should say, like, obviously something that all of the high-floor trams have in common is the accessibility issue. But I certainly think, like, we immediately, the main thing that we think about with accessibility is wheelchairs, and obviously high-floor trams are a hard barrier to wheelchairs. It's virtually impossible to use the tram in that situation. There's also a sort of a soft barrier to people with prams or maybe people who have other mobility issues, whatever. And I've certainly found, as someone who's operated a pram, on trams a few times, you often sort of rely on there being somebody else there to lift the pram up into the tram with you, and perhaps more stressfully rely on someone being there to help lift it down again.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I have lifted a pram with a sleeping baby in it from ground level into a B class, which I was like super confident going in that would be fine, and it was really, really hard. But someone did point out to me that this is something that in the past the conductor would have helped you out with.
Of course.
But these days, probably not many situations where the driver would be able to come back and help out.
I guess you also have to consider when these were built, the number of platform stops was zero.
I think it was
pretty
zero,
much.
yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
So even if they did have low floor trams,
Yeah,
it probably would have made things easier, but
Yeah, correct.
it wouldn't have made it fully accessible anyway.
Yeah. When was the first platform stop? I think it was. I think it was when the first C classes came.
Yeah,
out.
that was the first super stop was Collins and Swanson.
Yeah.
And that was
I think-
2001 or 2. I want to say.
Yeah. I think they were actually launched like together, possibly, like the
true.
super stop and the tram.
Although, would we consider the former St Kilda and Port Melbourne lines, even though they were
true,
high
yeah.
platforms, technically,
Yeah. good
Maybe.
point, Yeah.
I'm not sure. If you
Yeah.
know, let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
As I said, we'll find it out.
I guess we need to decide
Yeah, in terms of
where
a
to put it.
rating, yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I'm thinking a B on that basis.
Yeah.
Like, they're good, and like I said, they're
Yeah.
well built. They seem reliable, especially for an old tram of
I guess a lot
40,
of
50
its
years old.
downsides are more based on the era that it was built rather than
Yeah.
it's not like they have a significant design flaw or anything. It's just that was the way of thinking at the time.
Cool. All right, we've got a B.
B.
Fantastic.
So next up we have the A class, and the A class are divided into two subtypes, the A1s and the A2s, which are all still in service today. Possibly accepting some accident withdrawals, I'm not sure. And they were built pretty immediately after the Z3s, so it was 83. And the A1s entered service, they were originally fitted with trolley poles, and obviously at that time they were in the green and yellow Met livery, and then the A2s, I'm pretty sure, all delivered with pantographs, and the A1s were later converted to pantographs. And today it's sort of the the one example of subtypes of trams which is virtually impossible to tell the difference between them. I'm sure there are like proper tram people that can tell the difference, but from what I understand, they have a different braking system. I don't even know what the difference is, but basically, after all these years of looking at photographing and riding trams, I still can't immediately tell the difference between them. So
can't help you. Sorry.
Definitely nobody out there push yourself to try and try and be able to do it. The easiest way is just by looking at the number range. I think it's about 2.7 something they change into the other one. I mean, they are really a more modernized Z class, and then they've got that like redesigned front with the shorter snout.
Stubby.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure if the overall tram is shorter than a Z class or not. They sort of look like it, but I'm not sure if that's just because of that shape on the front.
From what I remember, the Zs had a slightly larger capacity, but that might have been because of the interior configuration.
Yeah.
But they're very similar
Yeah.
lengths anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's correct. So the A's are the lowest capacity tram on the network today. They've still got those lovely drop down windows.
Yes. And that's something I was going to say with this. The difference was that the A's don't have, like, they're not as well configured for standing.
Yep.
The Zs have that big space at the front.
Yes.
But yeah, the A's are definitely configured more for seating. I don't think they had that
I think you're right.
reconfiguration. Because the Z1s and 2s, go back to that, they had the space for the conductor as well, as we were talking before.
Yeah,
Whereas these,
early on they had, the Zs had like an actual little conductor's little...
Yeah, the booth.
Yeah.
Because these never did, as far as I know.
No, I don't think so. Of all the trams, I've actually ridden A classes a lot because, I've never really been a regular tram commuter, but I did work for a few years in North Richmond, so I did do quite a few laps up and down Victoria Street on A classes and Cs, for very short distances mostly, but yeah, it'd probably be up there with the higher number of miles I've done on trams.
Well, I've got a lot of nostalgia with these because I used them a lot. I grew up in the eastern suburbs, so these service, the 10948. So I've spent much more time on this tram than any other. So I've got a bit of bias there because there's some childhood memories. I remember seeing these in the Met liveries at the old Mont Albert tram terminus and all that sort of thing. So I will admit that there's that bias to this, but I do like the openable windows, and I also like something that's common across the Zs, the As, and the Bs is the seats. These have really comfortable seats. Yeah, they're not the ironing board seats that we'll see later.
They're actually more comfortable than a lot of the train seats.
Oh yeah, undoubtedly, and buses too.
Yeah, and they do ride really well. All these Command high floor trams as well, and I think too the way they're controlled, like they're quite smooth to take off, and most of the time, sometimes you
subject to the driver. Yeah,
that's right. Sometimes in autumn you get ones that have got like wheel flats on every single axle because they've like slipped on the autumn leaves on Victoria Parade, but which looks quite funny when you get like an A class which is basically bouncing along with wheel flats on all four axles.
So I really like these trams. I'm putting them in A tier just because again there's that nostalgia. The openable windows is a big plus. It's got 3 doors. The seats are really comfortable. Again, there's the high floor issue that we mentioned before, so there is that to consider. But again, considering the time they were built and the context, if they were built today, that's a different story. Yeah, I think. But we're talking the 1980s here.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry. Something else about these is heating and aircon. Yeah. These do have heaters.
Yes,
they're not terrific,
but no aircon.
No.
They've got a little driver's air conditioner. Same with the Zs. You can see the little
the fans,
retrofitted little aircon pod on top of the driver's compartment.
That's right. So that marks them down for sure. But
that's true.
Yeah, that's my biased rating.
I think I'm gonna. I can't go B.5, can I? No. I think I'm gonna go B just because I think they are functionally very similar to the Zs, even though they are like a modernized design. I think from a passenger point of view, they're pretty similar. I do think they look better than a Z though. And I'm going to go B.
Our next one is the B class tram. We are lumping together the B1s and the B2s, so we can talk about the differences between them, but they're more or less the same tram, subject to some of those differences.
Yeah, and the B ones are both withdrawn now as well.
Exactly.
So,
they're not in operation. So technically don't fall in our list, but
Yeah.
the B ones were built first, and there were two of those. It was 2001, 2002.
Yep.
And
they were essentially a prototype. I mean, obviously they only built 2 of them, so they were the first. They were the first articulated trams in Australia. Maybe even. It's usually a safe bet to say also the Southern Hemisphere. Probably true.
Tram network in Buenos Aires or something.
Yeah, that's right. But definitely in Australia. You know, this was at a time when they were about to convert the St Kilda and Port Melbourne lines to light rail. So I think there was a bit of sort of branding around that where they wanted to call them light rail vehicles. You know, I think they wanted to run them on that route, and they wanted it to be a radically different modern experience. They originally had these like folding steps in the doorway that I think could be adjusted to be either for ground level or sort of high platform height.
It was for that railway conversion because the railway platforms are obviously much higher than
but yeah, the B2s were the main production version, and there's 130 of them. And they're just great. They're just excellent trams. I mean, they're really like 2 A classes stuck together with air conditioning. I believe they're very popular with drivers as well. One tram driver I've spoken to absolutely loves B classes and thinks they're the best thing ever.
Well, I love these trams as well. I think they're terrific. They're, as we said, solid, but solid times 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I've been on trams that have been hit by cars.
Yes.
In this tram, and you like barely notice it.
Yes,
to be honest, like it's just a small jolt, and then it's like you see the car's totaled and the tram's completely fine.
I've only had that experience in an A class, and it was quite similar, where they just bulldozed the car out the way.
Yep.
And when we get to talking about C classes, we can talk about the other possibility with that.
But these are good though. And the other difference, obviously, between the B1 and B2 is the aircon.
Yes.
So that's the other way to notice it. And now I think they've sealed all the windows, I want to say.
They
almost
used to
all
have
the windows.
like a little flappy window that could open.
Yeah, I've tried them recently and they seem to be locked.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's bad luck, but...
Well, I'm not sure if some of them are just jammed as well, because it's like
True.
There's no real reason to open them most of the time. But the Bs were our last high floor tram. I think there was actually a serious proposal to build a like low floor add-in section to put between them. And it's a real shame that didn't happen, because I think that would have made basically the ultimate Melbourne tram. You know, it would have been large, not fully, but largely accessible. And I think, you know, that's there are some people that are sort of like passionately like, no, the whole thing has to be low floor. But I think, you know, as long as you have a reasonably sized section that is, I think that's a lot. You know, it's way better than not having anything. And obviously it would have made quite a long tram if they'd done that. So there might have been some questions about how they would have fitted in certain places, but it would have been really cool. And it's probably not something that's that worth considering now, given that the trams themselves are sort of in their 30s and 40s.
But having said that as well, like they are in their 30s and 40s, but they stood up really well. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've been refurbished a few times. Obviously, they've had
they
paint jobs.
They don't really feel old. I mean, they've got that sort of 80s vibe, but a lot of the recent refurbishments, like some of them, I think they made the walls like almost white, like it's actually really bright and clear in there, and they do, you know, like all the commuter trams, they just ride really well, and they are very comfortable over long distances. You know, I think I rode one all the way out to Boonwurrung once or twice, and you know, very, very comfortable for that.
Yeah, very nice. And the seats as well, obviously the same as the seats in the as we talked about before.
I should say, with that thing of like putting a low floor section in the middle, that's exactly what Zurich did with their 2000 class tram, which is basically a like narrow gauge single-ended B class. It's the same kind of shape, and also same number range, 2000 number range.
Right.
And yeah, they built a later section with a low floor bit in the middle, which I have at least one photo of, which I will give you to put in the video so that we can, you can see what I'm talking about.
Excellent, sounds good. And on that, you know, I do really want to put these in the S tier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's that question of
if that's the only thing.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
So if we had that free section,
we could put the hypothetical modified B class with low
B3.
floor section, the B3.
Yeah.
The hypothetical B3 could go in the S tier, and the real B2 class could go in the A tier, maybe.
I'm happy with that. I think that works. If we had the three carriage, you've got, as you said, the perfect quintessential Melbourne tram.
So we didn't start out with hypothetical trams on the list, but it is a pretty obvious one. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it was actually a real proposal. It's not just an enthusiast fantasy.
Marcus Wong had a post on this.
Yeah.
And he had there were drawings and everything.
Yeah, I think there might actually be drawings for it in the Comenge history book.
I was just going to say as well, the interior arrangement of the seating I think is really good, especially the thing's called the Apollo redesign.
Yeah.
It's that, they've increased the capacity slightly, but it's creating more standing room and making it easier to stand with those seats on the walls and things.
Yeah.
Even when a B class gets, really, really busy, it obviously is packed, but it seems to flow better than a similar A class tram, as we talked before. Doesn't manage that flow of passengers as well.
Yeah.
And also riding in the articulated section is really fun.
All right, let's do
oh, here we go.
everybody's favourite.
Not spoiling anything.
So again, there's a C1 and a C2, but they are, unlike the A1 and A2 or B1, B2, the C1 and C2 are fundamentally different trams. They are Alstom Citadis trams as a base level, but they're a different type of Citadis tram, and they look quite different. So we're going to do the C1 first. So, the C1s were Melbourne's first low floor trams. They sort of brought in the privatisation era in Melbourne. So they were the trams that Yarra Trams got when Yarra Trams was one of the two franchisees of the network. And I think they beat M-Tram to getting them into service. So they were the first low floor trams. I can remember seeing a C-Class at Preston Workshops outside. It was night time and they'd parked it outside and it was kind of lit up, and it was the first C-Class, and it had written on the side of it, Melbourne, welcome, here's your new low floor tram, something like that. And it did look really space age. It was quite, having never seen a low floor tram before.
It's completely different.
It did look very futuristic, yeah. In hindsight, I've got no idea what I was doing standing outside Preston Workshops in the dark when I would have been like 11 or 12 or something, but there must have been a logical reason for that.
I'm sure. Gunzels always have logical reasons for standing in the middle of nowhere at midnight. Yeah, I think the first time I saw these was, I actually remember when they opened the extension to Box Hill.
Yeah.
And the C-Class tram rolled into the tram stop, and we were standing on the platform, and it was like the Premier and ministers or whatever, and they got on this tram and then went to Box Hill. It was the tram at I can't remember the name, Inglesby Road, maybe the first one after Union Road. Yeah. And they all got on and went to Box Hill. That was the first time I saw one of those. And it looked like from the future kind of thing. It was It's just so radically different to anything that we'd seen or I'd seen in Melbourne before. Well, I think that was part of the issues with the swaying and the stability issues that came later. Once it gets above like 30 k's an hour, even today, even after they've done all the fixes, it's still
they really wobble, and they actually wobble alarmingly. Like you really grab onto something and you go, oh my goodness, are we going to tip over?
Which has happened, not for that reason. But,
that's right. I did take some footage of one wobbling on Victoria Parade, because there's this one spot where the track is quite dodgy. I'd been over it a few times and noticing that some drivers just didn't slow down for it, and they were really, really rocking back and forth. So I went and filmed that exact spot to capture that wobble. But so I guess like the Citadis is it's kind of an off the shelf tram, but it's sort of customizable. So I don't think you'll see this exact tram anywhere else, as far as I'm aware. But it was probably a cheaper option at the time, I think, and it was, as much as it was perhaps customized a little to Melbourne's network, it certainly wasn't specifically designed for Melbourne like all the previous trams had been. But I guess so. Like the other thing with the C's and the D class is the same when we get to that. Is that they don't actually have swivelling bogies. The tram is 3 sections, and the end 2 sections have fixed 4 wheels on each of those end sections. Right. and the middle section just hangs in between. So it's really like two 4-wheel trams with a no-wheel tram hanging in the middle. And what that means is that, like, when it goes into a curve, it's sort of like when with any other type of tram, we have a swiveling bogie. You know, you have the bogie turns to follow the curve, and then it sort of pulls the tram with it. Whereas with this design, the entire weight of that front section has to be pushed into the curve, and you really notice that they don't take curves evenly. You can sort of feel them getting pushed to the side. And the other thing is that because the nose section sort of hangs out, in front of the first axle, and because it's got that semi-streamlined shape down the bottom, when it runs into a car or something, usually a car, it almost acts as a lever, because that sloped bit at the bottom of the nose, will start to ride up on whatever it's hit, and it will just lever that whole front section off the track. And if you look at pictures of derailed C-classes, and there are lots of them, usually that whole front section just goes off to the left or the right, basically. And then a few times that's happened quite spectacularly.
I'm honestly surprised. I don't think this has happened. One hasn't tipped over when that's happened.
Yeah, I don't think we've had a tip over, but
it's going 60 k's an hour down High Street Q, and that van hit it or whatever.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised at how little damage there was, to be honest, to that one.
But yeah, there's been at least like there was that one, where was it, on somewhere on the 109 where it went like fully off the road.
White Horse Road. The Union Road.
A while ago, I saw somebody actually made like a sort of a grid meme showing like all 36 C1 classes and what accidents they'd been in. And I think there was maybe one that hadn't been in an accident, but every other one, there was a picture of it, like some sort of situation.
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, we can't blame trams for being hit by cars, but I think it's more the other trams deal with it a lot better than, than this tram.
And realistically, in Melbourne, we have so much mixed traffic running. It's something that just does happen. There's no real...
So 3 to 4 collisions a day now, I think.
Yeah.
Or even 5.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I think another thing I find with the C classes is it seems to me like their low speed control is not great. Like when they're moving along in like stop traffic, it's like there's a real minimum amount of acceleration, which kind of sort of like jolts forwards repeatedly.
No, I definitely say that a lot. And I've been on these a lot again, because the 48109 sort of tram, I've got two main things that I really don't like. I mean, everything we've just talked about as well, but in terms of interior passenger comfort, the seats are the most uncomfortable of any tram.
They are
ironing boards. They're just like, there's no padding at all. And for a long route like the 109,
it's a long way.
Important. If it was the route 30 or something, whatever. But you're on the tram for a good 50 minutes.
I mean, I guess that's probably what they're saying, is that like a lot of tram journeys are short, and a lot of people are happy to stand. I certainly usually stand on trams, but if I was going somewhere like Box Hill, I'd definitely want to sit down.
Even an intermediate like Kew or Boonwurrung or something. That's definitely something I've really noticed. And the other thing that I really don't like is the stop buttons. The original stop buttons were not great. They were a small, push button, and I think they malfunctioned, but they've since replaced them all with the touch. Buttons.
They don't really give you any like feedback.
There's no tactile feedback, and the other problem happens all the time is people lean on them.
Yes.
And so you get the constant beeping noise, which I imagine drives the driver insane, because it drives me insane. And then the tram stops unnecessarily. It's been an issue ever since. It's like pretty much every tram I get on, it's that, or you just hear it, and it's...
I should say one kind of cool things that the C-Class do have is they've got those quite big displays inside them.
Yes, they're very good.
Which show like weather and whatever else they want. I don't know, have they put advertising on them? I feel like they probably have.
I've as soon as the screens went in, I'm like, one of these screens is going to be advertising, but to their credit, not yet.
Okay, good.
It's just weather and the PID display for the next stop, which have been fantastic. I say they're the best of any tram that we have in Melbourne. They're big, they're easy to read, they don't malfunction that often. I've only seen a couple that have broken. And the weather's nice. The only thing that I would improve on that is something that we see in a lot of other countries, where when you are approaching an interchange, it will tell you the next services for those
Oh, yeah.
trams or buses or trains.
Yeah, totally.
And that would be something really useful to have on the other screen potentially. But
yes.
that's,
Yeah.
again, not a fault of this particular tram, but you're right. The internal PIDs are really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, there's a lot of issues with these. I don't like the ride quality.
Yeah.
It's, to me, an unpleasant experience. I'm happy to put these at the bottom. I'm
I'm
putting
going to
these
put them at the
D.
bottom as well. I will say the only thing I do think that they're I don't think they're the ugliest tram. Like, just go from pure aesthetics, I think they look okay compared to a lot of other low floor trams that I think do look ugly. I think this might be that just sort of like nostalgia kicking in again. But, it is a tram I'm like happy to photograph without I'm not worried about it like breaking my camera or anything. So
The ugly trams will break the
that's
lens.
right. Yeah, it's always a risk with the D class. But I think I think we basically decided before we started recording or even talking about this that they were going at the bottom. So yeah.
So firm D.
Done.
Speaking of C-class trams,
Yeah.
that brings us to the C2 class, which, as we said, are radically different, I'd say, to the C1.
So they're a 5-section tram. Same sort of deal with the wheel layout. There's just another middle section with another 4 wheels on it. So you've got 2 hanging sections in between 3 lots of 4 wheels. Hopefully that makes sense. But they had quite an unusual story where they were actually ordered for a French network in the place that I think is pronounced Mulhouse, something like that.
Good enough, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you go like purely phonetic English, it looks like Mulhouse, but I doubt that's how the French would say it. They had like a new build network in like about 2005, 2006 or something, and I think what happened is they literally ordered too many trams. Like, they discovered they had too many, and they leased 5 of them to Melbourne. And I think the idea was that they would go back eventually, but they never did, and I think we own them now. But there's a few interesting things that come out of that, because they so there's only 5 of them, but they're numbered in the 5100 range, but they're not numbered sequentially.
Right, yeah.
So there's 51, 03, 06, 11, 13, and 23. I do not know that off the top of my head. I was just looking at the Wikipedia article in front of us. But I believe that's because the last 2 digits is actually their French number so that was like their original network number in when they were still in France. And so when they arrived here, they were yellow, which is the livery for the Mulhouse network, and they were nicknamed Bumblebees, which I think was some kind of public competition type thing. And they actually got a whole bunch of decals along the side. They had pictures of bumblebees on them. They also had like bumblebee names, so they were named like Bumblebee 1, Bumblebee 2, etc., which is not in the same numerical order as their fleet numbers.
Oh god, I didn't even notice that.
And so at some point they got painted in the normal Yarra Trams colour scheme, but they actually still have their little bumblebee name and number in front of the cab, or next to the cab. However, these trams are often in all over advertising liveries, and I think when they're doing that, they don't have that. But when they were still yellow, they were still proper bumblebees. I remember they had a thing on the side that said buzzing up and down Route 96.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yeah.
And they have been on Route 96 their entire lives. They actually still had their French fleet number on the front as well, on the opposite side of the cab. And I do have a picture showing that. And I think there was actually some French like signage or something inside. I remember there being something written in French on the wall. Can't remember what it was. I don't think I've got a picture. Very high chance that Marcus Wong probably does have a picture.
Marcus, if you're watching and you've got the photo, let us know. We'll pass it on. But yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't I was vaguely aware of the backstory, but not that level of detail.
So it really seems like early on they were really intending on sending them back.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, they
and
didn't.
I think part of the reason we kept them was because that's when we had a tram shortage as well. Like, we just kept, I think they extended the lease and then realised, we actually need to keep these trams.
But yeah, I mean, today they're kind of a fun thing because there's only 5 of them. It sort of creates that sort of, you know, as an enthusiast, it creates a bit of interest to have a tram that you won't run into regularly. But I mean, they are entirely on the 96, so if you hang around on Burke Street or whatever, you will see one relatively quickly. But they still always kind of stand out a bit from the other trams. And, you know, I did say that I thought the C1s looked all right. I do think the C2s look much better. I think
agree.
they've got a much better designed front.
To me, they look like a high-speed train.
Yeah.
Really? Like, you know, it's
Well,
got
they
that
are
same...
probably like streamlined. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like it's based on like a TGV design or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, it looks...
Well, they are built by the same company that built the TGV.
Exactly.
So
that's how I'm sure there's some link there somewhere.
Yeah.
And they're from France.
Um,
But yeah, aesthetically, I really like the outside, particularly when they're in the PTV livery. I think they're a really, really good looking. Some trams don't look that terrific in the PTV livery, but I think the Bumblebee C2s look really nice. Or on the rare occasion you see them in that, because as you said, there's usually ads all over them. But yeah, the aesthetically nice. I've been on them not that often because I don't catch the 96 that often. But interior, it's like, I think it's a very nice.
They've got different seats, haven't they? Like they've got like their own seats.
They're not ironing board seats for the C1s. Yeah. So I think here, like particularly for the route that they're on, which is a really busy route, and going through the city a lot, the passenger flow again is really good. They've got a good number of doors. They're well located. The standing room is good. The internal displays, like a lot of them, probably not as good as the C1s, but they are nice. The audio quality seems to be better in this than a lot of the other trams as well. I don't know if that's just age or the build quality or something else, but it seems to be particularly good in these trams.
Yeah. They also have this kind of weird thing where there's actually one door which is like out of use. There's a I guess it's on the right hand side of the cab. You can see in that picture there how there's no door on the end of that section.
Oh yeah,
there is actually a single door there that's like just blanked off, and I assume that's maybe because they were planned to use like longer platforms in France than they use here. But yeah, that's kind of unusual.
Interesting, didn't know that. Yeah, I really like these trams. I have to put that in a A or S tier for me. What?
I'm probably going to go... I sort of like them a lot as an enthusiast. But sort of like, I don't know, mechanically they're still like a fixed wheelbase thing. And I guess I just haven't ridden them that much to know if the ride quality is much better or not. I'm not sure. But I think I would probably go... I don't think I'd put them that high. I might put them B, I think. But I do have a little bit of a soft spot for them. Yeah.
I'll put them A then.
All right. So next up we have the D class, which is a Siemens Combino. In that privatisation era where the network was split in half, Yarra Trams got the C classes and M-Tram got the D class. So they arrived shortly after them. They're kind of a sort of a parallel evolution, I suppose, but also produced by a competing company. And initially it was just the D1s, which are 3-section ones, very similar to a C1 in terms of layout. They've got that same wheel arrangement and everything. And then a few years later they ordered the D2s, which are a 5-section one. And there's only about 20 of them. It's not a huge fleet. So, I mean, one thing that's always stood out to me is that it looks like these trams have a moustache. You know, it's got this like black rubber, I think it's rubber, strip along the front.
Never noticed.
Which is presumably for like bulldozing cars out the way.
Yeah. Needs a cow catcher.
Yeah. And they've also got this funny little light, like directly above the destination port. There's a little white light in the middle. I don't know what it is for, or if it, like, because no other tram has that. So I don't think it has any sort of meaning. It seems to be just like a standard Siemens thing. But to me, it makes them look like one of those like deep sea fish that's got the little lure.
Like anglerfish,
thing on the top. Yeah. I
actually quite like the look of these trams, to be honest. I actually prefer the outside design of these to the C1s.
Yeah.
I think these look less boxy than the C1s. I like the slightly curved windows. I kind of like the mirrors as well that kind of
they
come
are
out.
funny looking,
Yeah, that looks like a bug or something. But yeah, the front of these trams I think I think is quite nice. My main issue with the front is the destination display.
Yeah.
They don't have the orange text on black background ones at the old comment trams, which I think is the easiest to read and really visible. Yeah. This one's still got the pale fluoro yellow on black, which if the sun's not in the right place...
Which the comment trams used to have. And
and they switched them over.
Yeah, I just think they look weird, to be honest, but...
it's all opinions.
It aesthetics. Is all opinions, yeah. We're probably going to kick off a huge argument about this now, which will be great.
But the interior.
We have to talk about the interior on these trams because it's weird. So I guess the problem you always have with low floor trams is where to put all the stuff that you would normally put under the floor on a tram. And it seems like the solution in the D-Class was to just put most of it just in the tram. So over the bogies, there's like all these weird shapes sticking up from the floor, and they've kind of got seats like tacked onto the side of them. It is kind of useful because you can like chuck like a bag or something up on that level spot, but it's not good passenger space usage at all. It sort of looks weird. It's slightly uncomfortable, and it's just not very good use of space.
No, my understanding was it had something to do with the wheel strengthening as well. Yeah, they had to do something with the seat configuration to build that extra there to strengthen, because like the C's, they also had some issues, I think, with stability or something to do with the bogies, which you can still hear today very audibly if you hear a D2 go down Royal Parade at 60 k's an hour. Yeah, they have this like roaring sound. So the metal hitting metal noise, it just rolls past you. I think it had something to do with that. Yeah. There's also been it's still not a good configuration. No. There's also been a bunch of like build quality issues on this. I think I've seen ones where you can see like water leaking through through the articulated section. So they've got that same kind of thing with the C-Class, where they were obviously a pretty cheap option at the time and not specifically designed for Melbourne. I think part of it goes to the quality of the track. And it's not to say that we don't build things well. It's just because we have so many mixed traffic conditions, as you said, it gets damaged a lot. The wear is a lot greater.
And it's also a legacy network, we've got, this is a tram network that's evolved over 100 years, compared to a lot of other places that Siemens is probably selling trams to, where they're just dropping them onto
light rail dedicated track.
Exactly.
It's different.
The other thing is too, these D-Class, you will see some overseas that look really similar. There's some in Amsterdam, narrow gauge ones in Bern that look quite similar. It's obviously it's like a slightly smaller profile, but the general just like design of the front is the same.
I remember seeing the ones in Amsterdam. It kind of disoriented for a bit.
It's
wait,
weird.
What? Why is there a D2 class outside?
And I think they're single-ended, I think, but they but they look basically like a D2.
Yeah, and they're just as long, I think. Or they're 7. Some of them are in 7 sections.
I think some of them might be.
There's just other things about the interior as well. The seats are uncomfortable, but not as bad as the C1s. Yeah, and I think like there's a bit more padding. Yeah, and the stop buttons, I've been told, and have also experienced myself, break a lot. Like they don't work a lot of the time. You've got to hunt around for a stop button that actually lights the next stop, or sometimes the light that says next stop doesn't work. So you have actually requested the stop, but the light hasn't come on, so you don't know, so you think it's not going to stop. And the middle sections, I find the standing area is okay, but where those single seats are in the front and back, like it's really awkward to stand in the aisle, which is again something similar with the C1s that I forgot to mention, but it's not conducive to standing, so you've kind of got a bit of wasted space there on top of the existing wasted space with those big plastic bits on the side.
But that roaring sound they make is like, it's one of those things that is definitely bad, but also something you definitely get nostalgic about in the future. Like, remember they used to make that roaring sound?
Well, I don't know about nostalgic. I like hearing myself think when I walk down a road. It's so loud. Like, if it's at 30, 40 k's an hour, like you're talking to someone and you've almost got to stop talking because it's just, it's like this really, really loud rumbling noise. But maybe, who knows? Ask me again in 20 years.
Well, exactly,
So ranking,
I'd be going pretty close to the bottom. I'm not sure if I'm going to go right at the bottom. Maybe I'll put it C.
Yeah, I was thinking C as well. C. They're not quite as bad as quite as bad as the C1s. And again, this will be a debate. I know it's a debate between me and other people I know.
Yeah.
But for me, C1s are absolute bottom.
Yeah.
The Ds are slightly better. So they need to be recognised for that.
Yeah.
Now we've got the newest trams currently operating in revenue service in Melbourne. We've got the E-Class. We were having a discussion as well about whether there is actually an E1 and E2 class.
Yeah.
Wikipedia seems to think that there are.
Yep, as does the broader enthusiast community.
Right.
And I've definitely heard people in the industry use those terms as well, but I also had somebody who should know quite confidently say that it's just a Gunzel term, and internally it's just the E-Class. But, you know, it's kind of probably doesn't make much difference. Yeah, basically they changed the design halfway through, so they built 50 E1s and then 50 E2s, and the main difference is it's a different, like, external cab design. The E1s, like, the lights down the side kind of like fan out in this like cool aesthetic thing, and then on the E2s it's just like in a single line. But there is also the cool thing where there are some trams have had like a cab replaced in an accident, so they've ended up with one of each type on each end.
The cat dog trams.
Cat dog trams, yes.
Yeah. Or E1.5.
Yes.
We'll have a photo of that somewhere here. But I actually think I prefer the E2 cab design slightly more to the E1s.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. I think like even just getting used to this tram, I remember when the tram first appeared, it was really jarring to me, and I didn't really like it initially. It took a while to get used to it.
Yeah.
But now they've been around for a while, I've come around to liking the look of them quite a bit. Especially the E2s when they've come out of front. Yeah, it's a little less boxy or sharp on the edges on the front. It's a bit smoother, which I like.
Yeah. I think the E's have basically proven that they're a very good tram. You know, they are very big and heavy and quite power hungry by all accounts, but which is, I think, limited a bit where they can be used. But they fixed that sort of ride quality issue that the early low floor trams had, because they actually do have a swiveling. So that under the end section there's a swiveling bogie, and then the middle section has two swiveling bogies. So it's kind of like the end sections are suspended at one end, and then the middle section has got two swiveling bogies. So it's they sort of track much better through curves, and they don't derail as easily, and they just sort of have generally better ride characteristics. And I think the seats are pretty good, aren't they? Like, maybe not quite as good as the Comenge trams, but I think they're all right.
Yeah, I'm going to say they're okay. The padding's good. The one thing that I do find with these is that they're quite narrow, and
true.
I think they're a little bit close together. I don't know if that's just the thing with comparing trams, but I find but when you're sitting there, if you've got four people sitting in those areas, it feels quite cramped, even if people don't have bags and things. So, but I understand that this was designed, the standing, I guess, area and the ability for people to not be seated and still be comfortable is a lot better than a lot of other trams.
Definitely.
Because of the types of routes that they're generally running on as well. Like, so I think that's good, but the seats could be better, I think.
The middle section is it's kind of a bit cluttered, partly because like it's got those two bogies. So they have to have that raised section with the seating. And it also means it's only got one door on that middle section.
Yes.
I did once make the mistake of getting in through the middle door with a pram, and there's nowhere to go. Like there's a middle pole there, and then you can't fit between the seats in either direction.
Yeah, right. But I think as well, like something else with the designs, you've got the sections at the front and the back that don't have doors. Yeah. So you've got like this little kind of enclosed area, which I kind of like. Like if you're on a long journey and you're in the city, you can kind of go there, and people don't go there if they're traveling a short distance.
But if you're on a short distance, you can get stuck there.
Exactly. Particularly if it's really packed.
Which is partly why these trams they actually have an external driver's door.
Yes.
That's
really good.
The only tram in Melbourne that has that.
Yeah. I think that's a big bonus. I don't know what the drivers think, but I think
it means that they can get out, which they I think too, like, it's probably worth saying that the A-Class was kind of like, it was a return to building trams in Melbourne. They're built by Bombardier before it was absorbed by Alstom, in their factory in Dandenong, which is the old Comenge factory. So they're built in the same factory as the Zs, As and Bs. And, you know, that was also a bit of like a political kind of spring back to kind of recognising the failings of that early privatisation era, buying overseas trams and stuff. And the E-Class do have this very proud made in Melbourne for Melbourne decal on the windows. And I think that sort of paid off. I think they have been recognised as a much more successful tram than any of those early low-floor trams.
Yeah. I'd call this one the first Melbourne low-floor tram.
Yes,
to be honest. Yeah. The other two, while they were low-floor trams, were not from Melbourne, as we discussed. So this is like the first, I guess, real step towards, creating what we'd call a light rail network or a quote modern tram network, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
This is like Melbourne has entered the 21st century sort of vibes from seeing these trams out on the street.
Yeah.
The only thing, though, of course, is there's no openable windows, but because the quality of the air conditioning and heating is good on these, I don't think I've come across a time when that's been an issue. Yeah. On the C's and D's I have. Yeah. Not these ones.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably good. And that's probably why we're talking about what building to Australian Melbourne conditions is.
Totally,
that's definitely one of them. Is
serious air conditioning. It's very important.
Serious heating. Anytime it goes above 30 degrees, all the C ones just completely balk.
Yes.
And then you're stuck because you can't open the windows. But these ones, I travel on these quite a bit. I wouldn't say very often. Yeah. I've yet to experience one where the aircon or heating has failed.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm quite happy to put these high up on our list.
Yeah, I'd probably put them A, maybe.
Yeah, I'd put them in A as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very nice.
So that sort of brings us to the end of trams that are actually in normal service. We are going to talk about the W8 class, which, run on Route 35, the city circle. They were W6s and 7s and 5s, I think, that were very extensively rebuilt by the Bendigo Tramways, by the way, a few years ago, basically to keep them, modern, up to modern standards for running every day in mixed traffic on the network. So it was actually a very, very heavy rebuild, and some people do kind of claim that these are essentially brand new trams built, on the spot where they demolished the old tram. I did actually see one partway through rebuild at Bendigo, and there wasn't much left of the old one. So they've got like new electrical equipment. A lot of the body is new. So yeah, look, obviously they are lovely looking trams. They are iconically the Melbourne tram, even though they're not actually a very large part of the tram experience for most commuters. But it's certainly what people think of when they think of a Melbourne tram.
You can see that, the trams that we've sent overseas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're not necessarily W8s, but they are some variant of a W.
Correct.
And that's the iconic, like Christchurch, Seattle, whatever. Like,
there's tons of them in the US, but all over the place. And, they sound great. They look great. And I actually think they kind of fill this important role of just visually just being a part of Melbourne as well. You're walking along Flinders Street and a W-class trundles past. I think, they're almost worth having around just for that. They really do. They really do have that kind of iconography to them.
To add to the vibes of city streets and tourists as well, because they run on the 35 city circle. A really common question from visitors is can I ride the city circle tram? Where can I get it? And they don't want to ride it because it's free anymore, because obviously every
all
tram
trams are free.
Are free. It's to ride on a Melbourne tram, on an old tram. That's the reason why they want to go on it.
Yeah. We should say too that in terms of running historic trams on the network, outside of the city circle, Melbourne is actually not very good at this. We have the collection of historic trams at Hawthorn, which used to be able to run on the network. And there's basically, there's been a few, up until 2010, there was a few little shots at running them, but they're basically all confined to the museum at Hawthorn, which, by the way, should still absolutely go to the museum at Hawthorn. But, I think a lot of people think that we're very good at running historic trams in Melbourne, but actually the only ones we're running are W8s, which are, modern rebuild for modern, the modern world.
Yeah. I'd say if people think that, they should look up the story of the restaurant tram.
Correct.
And what happened there, that's a perfect example.
Did you ever go on the restaurant tram?
I never did, and I'm very unhappy that I never got to go.
I did once. It was very expensive.
Yeah.
It was very good though.
Yeah.
We did there was a few different length options. I think we did it for my 21st, something like that, which must have been pretty close towards the end, I think. And we went on the run that went from Port Junction down Route 12 to St Kilda and back. So it's actually not very far at all, but they did it at very low speed, just trundling along.
Yep.
And the food was really good. The food was actually cooked on the tram. Like, they had this tiny little kitchen, and they would not let your glass of champagne get empty. There was a guy just like walk up and down continuously filling people's glasses. So
Fantastic.
yeah, it was a pretty cool thing.
But yeah, in terms of ranking this, I mean, it's really hard because
Yeah,
we're
they don't
comparing
really
something built.
exactly. They don't really fall into any sort of particular category. And if you're going from just like, you know, how iconic they are, they'd be right at the top. But how functional they are as a tram today, they'd be quite close to the bottom. So
Yes, yes, for sure. I mean, try running one of these on, you know, the 96 today.
that's right. Yeah. So they're sort of almost exempt from rating, I feel like. But I also think we'd probably be maybe hunted down if we rated them too low.
So we'll just leave that to what rating would you give it? Let us know in the comments.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, let's do that. Everyone, you have to give your own rating to the W class.
Give us your rating and we'll do an aggregated rating based on everyone's.
Yeah.
Although we are asking Gunsel's predominantly, so
Yeah.
it'll be close to the top. But that's fine. We'll do that.
Yeah. So that's it for trams that physically exist. There is one more tram that semi-physically exists. The next trams that are coming out are going to be the G class. It's another Alstom product. It's a
Flexity 2.
Flexity 2.
Yep.
And there is a full-scale mock-up, but of half the tram, which they built basically to get sort of user and stakeholder feedback on. And both of us have visited the tram, which, as some of you might know the story, it was kind of funny because we both went there on separate days. We both took videos of it, both made quite similar videos of it, and then released them within 40 minutes of each other. Yep. Philip just beat me to it. I was like, I should make that video live. That was finished, and I opened up. I'm like, oh, weird. No, wait, that's not mine.
Very similar. Yeah. So we'll put links to both of them as well.
Absolutely.
In the description, so you can check them out.
That was kind of hilarious. But
it was. Yeah, we weren't there on the same day.
No,
we had no knowledge.
We hadn't even met at that stage.
No.
It was a complete coincidence. Yeah.
It was fun though, and you know we can talk from first-hand experience in a way from obviously not an operational tram, but more or less what the tram's going to look like.
Well, I also just think from like even before we talk about what the actual tram is like, I mean, it's the fact that they're doing this level of research and stakeholder involvement and stuff that's like the biggest change since like those trams in the early 2000s where they were just grabbing a tram off the shelf and sort of shoehorning it into the Melbourne network. I think it's so good now that they're actually getting, you know, disability groups through and all sorts of different user groups and obviously tram drivers and everything like that. So they actually get some real world feedback on it before they go ahead with the design. So I think, you know, whatever criticisms you might be able to make about certain parts of it, I think the fact that they've gone to that effort is really important and a big change from what the attitude sort of used to be like.
Absolutely. And, you know, part of this mock-up as well, when we were there, they said, you know, everything you see here, we already know we're going to make some changes to what's here based on user feedback for that very reason. And there will almost certainly be more.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic that, they're going to that level of effort and actually demonstrably listening to people's feedback too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was really good to see.
Yeah. So I guess it's going to be a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter than an E class,
which I love. I love medium capacity.
Yeah. So I think I think perhaps in the past everybody thought because we'd gone bigger and bigger and bigger for the last few trams. I think everyone thought that it was always going to keep going that way, but there is a practical use to having slightly smaller trams in Melbourne, especially because we have like some outer suburban routes like the 82 and the 78 and things like that where you actually just don't need that full capacity. But also depot space is a big thing. You know, if you can fit more slightly shorter trams in, then you can run more trams during the day. You know, each individual tram is a lower capacity, but you can get a higher frequency by having more trams. So it is and it certainly doesn't mean that we'll always order shorter trams in the future. I'm sure we will get more big trams again as well, but I guess the other significant thing is that it actually has a small traction battery, which is designed to be recharged through regenerative braking, and then it can be drawn from while accelerating, so it reduces the overall power usage of the tram. And I am always kind of skeptical about any use of like big batteries in transport vehicles as opposed to just drawing power from the grid. But I think in this case, again, it's a legacy network. You're trying to run them on lines with, you know, maybe older substations and things like that. I think it's going to make it so you can use these trams everywhere from the get-go, unlike the E-Class, which had, you know, power restrictions in some parts of the network.
The other advantage as well, which they mentioned to us, was that if there is a disruption to the electricity supply, it means that they can go under their own power for a short distance if they have to, which, you know, as you see, you know, if the power ever goes out on Swanson Street, it's just, you know, 50 trams.
And I mean, it'd be very interesting to know how far that can actually go.
Yeah.
I suspect it's not very far, but if it's enough to move out of an intersection, for instance, or even move to the next stop so that you can unload people safely, whatever it is, then that's kind of cool.
Exactly. In terms of the interior, I really liked the interior when we went in there.
Yeah.
The seats were better than an E-Class tram. There were minor changes, but from my experience of sitting down in them, they were still a bit uncomfortable because they weren't as well padded as an A-Class, but I don't think we're ever going to go back there. So
yeah, that's right.
He's hoping.
I also think that the padding on the mock-up might not have been the final version.
Yeah, there's a bit of that
it's
too.
Hard to judge that sort of thing, yeah.
And that was the same with the front PID, the front destination display.
Yeah,
I didn't find that easy to read, but apparently that's not what it's going to be.
I think it wasn't even illuminated, possibly. It was but
it was still the green text on the black, and I was like, that's not good, but apparently it's going to be better. So.
Yeah.
The interior PIDs, though, were fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Better even than the C1 PIDs we've seen.
Yeah.
It did have the interchange information. It was a lot clearer, easier to read. It's got an integrated hearing loop as well. So for blind people, it makes it much easier, or people hard of hearing, to navigate the network. And the accessibility options, they said they were looking into some, what did they say, research and development around accessibility with these trams specifically that they couldn't tell us at the time, but potentially maybe there'll be a G2 class that incorporates some of those improvements.
I think there is also an option to have an extended version with more middle sections to make a longer version of it as well,
And there's that one seat at the front as well, the accessible seat, which everyone was like, this is either the Gunzel seat or the accessible seat.
It is a strange design. Like, you can tell that like they had to fit it around the shape of where the bogey is under the floor. But I think it's a pretty good use of what they were sort of, you know, forced to use.
Absolutely. And that front section too, where they've got the extra door, you know, you mentioned before the C2 class don't have that door. This one will. And that's kind of an experiment in a way to see how well that works, because there's not much standing room there.
No, and it is quite cramped, and I think there's a risk that people get on at that door and they'll just cram up and fill up that area.
I think that's what will happen, unfortunately.
I think so too.
I remain
way better than the end of an E-Class where you just get stuck there.
Or it gets stuffy or something. So.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes, but I think it's good that they are trying new things as well, and we're not afraid to try something different, because, you know, innovation and new things sometimes creates good things. So we've got to see how that works. Well, I'm happy to give this an A. I think this is a very promising looking
I think I'd also give it a tentative A, obviously pending seeing a real one.
And moving on it.
And moving, yes. We have not been able to judge the ride quality at this point. But there's certainly no particular reason to think that it wouldn't be good.
No. I mean, the Flexity sort of very popular, solid basis on which to work on, and like I said, based on existing trams in Melbourne and Australia, so it's been proven.
And same thing again, it's being built in that Dandenong factory.
So thanks everyone for watching. That's the end of the tier list, plus our bonus G class that we mentioned. Very big thank you to Tapeset for coming along and having this tier list discussion.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you. Your expertise on this was very useful, because I don't know a lot about the technical aspects of it. So really, really appreciate it. If you're one of the few people in Melbourne who don't know about Tapeset or his channel, please check it out. I've put a link in the description and up here in the top right hand corner for you to have a look at it. Really great videos on transport, mainly in Melbourne and Victoria, and some really, really interesting topics. So definitely go have a look at those videos. And please subscribe to both of our channels if you haven't done so already, so that you can get new videos and you get notified when new stuff comes up, which is always handy. So any final words or things you Well,
No, I don't think so. Just reiterate, make sure you subscribe to Philip's channel as well while you're here. And yeah, thanks very much for listening. I've actually got no idea how long this has been. I think it's been a while, but thanks very much for sticking through to the end.
Yeah, if you enjoyed it or if you didn't enjoy it, please tell us in the comments. And we have included some things in here that will probably generate some comments. So please let us know your thoughts on those. And if you think we got the tiers right or we didn't get them right, anything else, any other thoughts you've got on these. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.